Why is climate change and climate justice a particular issue for Indigenous peoples? What are their main concerns? How have Indigenous peoples mobilized internationally on this issue, and with what results? In December 2007, a delegation of the Inuit, headed by the president of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, Sheila Watt-Cloutier, traveled to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights in Washington, D.C. to provide first-hand testimony of how global warming is destroying their way of life and to accuse the Bush administration of undermining their human rights. They coined the phrase, the right to be cold, asserting their rights to their culture, to their way of life. That very month, December 2007, Sheila Watt-Cloutier was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for her work. The seventh session of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in 2008 was devoted to the special theme, Climate Change, Biocultural Diversity and Livelihoods, the stewardship role of Indigenous peoples and new challenges. At that and subsequent sessions, the Forum adopted a series of policy measures regarding climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, conducted a number of studies, and inspired a number of global and regional conferences of Indigenous peoples that culminated in the Global Indigenous Leaders Summit in Alaska in 2009. This mobilization stimulated the extremely active participation of Indigenous peoples in the global negotiations on climate change, including in Paris in 2016. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Indigenous peoples were one of the most visible, if not the most visible, civil society group. With the continued devastation that is occurring in Indigenous peoples' territories owing to increased or inadequate precipitation, stronger and longer lasting hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons, long bouts of drought, the melting of glaciers and permafrost, increased flooding and rising sea levels, the urgent need to enhance Indigenous peoples' adaptive capacities and resilience and decrease their vulnerabilities is a matter of urgency. Indigenous peoples are vital to and active in the many ecosystems that inhabit their lands and territories, and are therefore in a position to help enhance the resilience of these ecosystems. In addition, Indigenous peoples interpret and react to climate change impacts in creative ways, drawing on traditional knowledge and other technologies to find solutions which may help society at large to cope with impending changes. For example, the Kalasha people in Pakistan practice Suri Yajek, a meteorological and astronomical knowledge system based on observing the sun, moon, stars, and shadows. The Kalasha people have used this complex system of knowledge for centuries to predict weather patterns, plan their harvests, and raise livestock. Passed down orally through proverbs, folk stories, and songs, Suri Yajek is used, for instance, to calculate the right time to take livestock to higher pastures, where it is cooler in the summer months. Suri Yajek connects the Kalasha people to their land and is central to daily life. As climate change leads to more extreme, less predictable weather conditions, traditional systems of knowledge such as Suri Yajek can reinforce the ability of communities to respond collectively to these changes and ensure the continuity of their way of life. Another example is Vanuatu's traditional architecture that makes a community more resilient in the face of climate change-related disasters. More specifically, it was discovered that the island's traditional Nakamal buildings that were constructed with modern materials and techniques were much more affected by the cyclone than Nakamals constructed using local materials and traditional building skills. Indigenous peoples and the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues have felt that there is a need to shift the focus in the international community so that the Indigenous peoples are seen as primary actors, nationally and internationally, when it comes to global climate change monitoring, adaptation, and innovation. Why do we speak about climate justice? What does that mean? The close relationship of indigenous peoples with lands and their dependency on ecosystems due to their subsistence lifestyles makes indigenous peoples highly vulnerable. The devastation wrought upon fragile ecosystems increases proportionally with increased emissions of greenhouse gases. These vulnerabilities are further compounded by their disadvantaged socioeconomic situations brought about by colonialism, continued racism, discrimination, and globalization processes which shape national economies into an one-size-fits-all unsustainable economic development paradigm. Climate change negotiations have to deal with the political economy of burden sharing with regard to emission reduction and the costs that will be incurred for implementing adaptation and mitigation measures. Since climate change is the result of the economic and political systems, climate advocacy is about changing these systems, not only to radically lower or halt greenhouse gas emissions, but also to address the question of equity and justice. This implies that there should be radical transformations of economic systems nationally and internationally. The inequity between rich and poor countries and between poor and rich people within countries cuts across all the issues being negotiated within the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. In conclusion, the main points brought forward by indigenous peoples and the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues are: 1. Indigenous peoples live close to nature and have lifestyles heavily depending on nature. They are therefore especially vulnerable to climate change. 2. Indigenous peoples have contributed the smallest carbon footprint, therefore they shouldn't bear a disproportionate burden from climate change. 3. Indigenous people should be engaged, and through their traditional knowledge, there should be recognition of their stewardship role. Indigenous people stress the importance of traditional knowledge since millennia and its contributions to climate change adaptation and mitigation measures. 4. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples should be respected in climate change negotiations and agreements. And especially states and intergovernmental agencies, as well as the private sector, must respect indigenous peoples' full and effective participation and their free, prior, and informed consent, land rights, cultural rights, and environmental rights. And 5th, any financing for adaptation and mitigation measures should go directly to indigenous peoples. You can hear some commentary on these issues by the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples on Climate Change and Indigenous Peoples in a link provided to you.